Hello and welcome everyone to the September 15th edition of our virtual sessions. Today I'm really excited to talk about a remote work self-assessment, and one of our clients so kindly volunteered to share some of his experiences through transitioning to remote work. And our goal today is really just to learn from each other, hopefully. And it's not saying that one way is right or wrong, or that if your way was better or worse. It's just to say, hey, look, we've all been struggling and having some challenges to face, and how can we together put ourselves in a better position, not only as an organization but our team, to be able to transition through some of these challenges. And one of the things that I'd like to challenge everyone listening live right now or watching in the future is to put a seed in the back of your mind as far as, what are the short-term memory, like we all just went through this in the last several months. What's the short-term memory that we can leverage to, as far as what should we be thinking about as this continues, and for other potential ways in which we look at our technology. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Again, just trying to remember what are the lessons that we've learned, what are some of the pain points, what are the things that worked really well as far as a short-term memory through this transition. The other thing that we'll be sharing at the end is that we put together a remote work self-assessment that we'll be sharing with everyone in the chat, as well as anyone who registered will get it as a follow-up in the follow-up email. It's really to give you some ideas and thoughts to challenge your thinking, or to give you some suggestions relative to how have we seen this affect other clients of ours, and how to give you some ideas to think about how you might change your investment strategy or your office strategy, or like even some of our clients, they're choosing to buy laptops more instead of desktops because they're easily able to take home, for example. Even little things like that, we're trying to help everyone think through, and so you can obviously make the best decision for yourself, but just give you some ideas to think about. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. If I really click on the next section here, is we're just going to share experiences today. So I would challenge folks to, in the Q&A, go ahead and don't just use it necessarily for just questions, although we welcome those too. Share if you shared a similar experience, right? So as our panelist goes through, which I'll introduce him in a moment, as our panelist goes through, he'll be sharing some experiences, and if you've got some comments on that, go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and we can publish those and show those to everyone else, or just ask some questions you might have that are clarifying questions. The goal is just, again, share some experiences today. What we really want to talk about then from a recommended action perspective is your unique takeaways. We hope that every single person listening or watching in the future is able to take one or two nuggets away from today that you can think about or take back to your organization. So think about that. And then, again, as I mentioned, we're going to share our remote work self-assessment tool as we put together, and then have some open Q&A with the rest of the audience. So thanks again for watching. Many of you know, but my name is Nathan Austin. I'll be kind of facilitating or guiding some of the questions, but our star and our client panelist is coming up here shortly, and Stephanie Kingsley is behind the scenes doing producing and staffing the Q&A. So, all right, 1 minute about MyTech. For those of you who've watched these before, we always like to at least share. Look, MyTech is a small and medium business technology and services consulting organization. We work with small and medium organizations between 15 and 500 folks that are technology users. That's the general size of organizations we work with. And one of the things that we found is over the last 20 years of being in business, that we have found a way. It's not the only way. It's not necessarily the best way. It's just we found a way where we know that we can achieve proven results and consistent results for and with our clients. And we know we can remove IT challenges, and we can enable your team to be 4 times more productive and drive 4 times more value out of your technology investments. So that's really what our goal is. We want to make IT easy for your team, and really we believe that with that strategic, proven methodology, it makes your organization more adaptable, and more able to address other challenges that every business faces out in the world, even something like a pandemic. So if you'd like to talk more about that, we'd love to invite you to have a conversation, and let's dig in a little deeper. But that's not what today is about, so we're going to move on, and we'll invite our panelists up here. So we're going to dig into client observations and discussion, and I'd like to introduce Jerry Huber, who's the Director of Operations for RX Function. And Jerry, I'll let you introduce yourself. You know yourself better than I do. So please take a moment, introduce yourself, your organization, a little bit about your role, and how long has your organization been leveraging Microsoft 365? And I think you might be muted if I can't hear you at the moment.
There we go.
There you are.
Now you can hear me.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Nathan. As you mentioned, I'm Jerry Hubert, Director of Operations for RX Function. RX Function is a startup company formed several years back, but really got off the ground about almost 3 years ago when we took on our first round of funding. We make a product that serves patients that have peripheral neuropathy. They can't feel the bottom of their feet, and so they don't know when their feet touch the ground. Our product improves mobility and balance and helping a lot of patients out there. I've been with the company 2.5 years, so just shortly after it was formed. And because we were new and had to buy all new technology 3 years ago, we started with Office 365. So we've had the product, but we were utilizing still the old style. When we had group meetings, we would have conference calls, like a conference bridge. And we would use Skype for Business when we had to just share screen content. Video was very poor with Skype for Business, I'm sure many of you would know. And we had a lot of technical problems being able to even share and getting kicked off and so forth. So that's kind of where we started.
Very good. So, all right, now I'm going to pull back from the technology side of things, because I feel like one of the challenges that many organizations face, including ours, by the way, is that they didn't necessarily have a plan or know how to expect something like a pandemic to happen and shelter from home to happen. So most organizations didn't have that and had to build it kind of as they went. So did your organization have a plan, or did you end up building criteria to help determine when your organization would be working from home, or when they would come back to the office, or how have you been navigating that?
Right. So like most, I suspect, we did not have a plan. We weren't expecting a pandemic. We weren't expecting to completely work remotely. We did have the advantage that as a startup company, we were built, the company was started without having an office. So kind of at its core, they had some remote experience, having to work virtually, so to speak. Plus, we from the beginning have had remote workers, sales reps, leader of sales, and so we had some experience in just how do we maintain the connectivity in that environment. But we did quickly put together a plan based on the state guidelines and so forth, and assessed who really needs to be here. And we found pretty quickly that, well, really the people that touch the product, that are in the lab, the engineers that are building product and testing product. It's tough to ship product remotely, so of course we had to be here. Those people are the ones that really we prioritize as being here. I'm in the office today, but it's rare that I'm in the office. I work remotely as well. So then we also, part of our process, developed a phased-in approach. So based on what's happening with the pandemic and the environment, is when we would allow a certain number of people back in the office. And frankly, I think we're finding that we're getting pretty good at this working remotely, and we're just as efficient, and work's getting done whether we're here or not.
Gotcha. Well, and I have a follow-up question I'm going to interject here in a moment. But so you had to build a plan in relatively rapid fashion, as many of us did. What are some of the things that some of the key challenges you feel you faced in figuring that out or executing that?
Probably the key challenges is just taking recommended guidelines and then applying them to us in what's practical, and sourcing all the tools, the shields, the supplies, especially during that time when it was very difficult to get. I think that was probably our biggest challenge, is just how far do we need to go, because not one size is going to fit all. We have we're a very small company, and so we felt we could do maybe some things that larger corporations could not do. I mean, social distancing, as an example, happens naturally here because there just aren't that many people in the office at any given time, even when we were all together. So the challenges was really around maybe getting things set up because we all have day jobs and we had to divert ourselves to work on policy and getting the safety precautions put in place and the supplies, whilst also trying to learn how to get our job done. I think the other challenge that some of our folks have faced is just the home environment. I'm happy to be here today because it's the first week of remote learning, and I've got 4 kids around the dining room table at home driving my wife crazy trying to do distance learning, and it's a nightmare, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot quieter here. So,
yeah.
So if I was in the home environment, it'd be very challenging. I'm not sure we could even have this meeting.
Yeah. Well, I think, thank you for hitting on that, because one of the areas, one of the challenges that many organizations faced, past tense, and are still facing, or are trying to learn even yet another lesson, is relative to what you just expressed, which is working from home. How does that impact your culture? How does that impact people's well-being? Then if they're trying to also balance, depending on the age of their kids, if they have kids, being able to successfully learn remotely, or if they need a daycare, things like that. So how have you seen some of those challenges and navigating those with your team? Again, because technology can be part of the solution, but it's a much broader conversation as far as how it impacts culture and people. We're all human, right? So what are some of the challenges, or how have you navigated some of that?
Well, I'll touch the easier one, which is probably technology. Yeah. And we were lucky in that we have new technology. Our equipment is new because we're a new company. We anticipated having bandwidth problems at various times. Not everybody's going to have the bandwidth they need at home, especially if they have a lot of users, like what's happening at my place today. But that was surprisingly did not impact us much. Maybe a situation or two is all. Getting dual monitors for efficiency at home, we addressed that. We offered to buy. It turns out most of us have dual monitors at home anyway, or we took them from work and brought them home. Probably the bigger challenge is just getting used to we're seeing the more human side of everybody, right? The dogs barking, cat walking across the keyboard, the yes. Kids coming in and asking dad, mom, or whatever. Yeah. And just recognizing, and I think becoming much more accepting of the crossover between home life and work life. And so it really hasn't been a big barrier for us, but it's definitely seeing a different human side seeing the human side, a full side of everybody that you work with.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, because you're absolutely right. I feel that different people have different perspectives, of course, on how much of your personal world do you bring to your professional world, right? But I feel that my opinion has evolved over time, that I feel it's okay to bring the reality of your personal world and share it. Like, one of the things that you just reminded me of, though, is that for years now, I've been in my out of office replies, instead of just saying, hey, I'm out of the office, I actually tell a little story about what I'm doing. And I'm always amazed at how many little replies I get, like, hey, have fun fishing, or gosh, I love it when you go up north, or man, Denver's awesome, or something like that. And I just love that. I think it's exactly what you said. It's showing the human side, because we are all a human. And the reality is we all do have personal lives and personal things that impact us, like the dog barking, or kids, or a cat walking across the keyboard. So that's excellent. I think that's good. If there's something positive that's come out of all this, it's that I think we're all starting to see that that's okay. So I do appreciate that. How do you see the ongoing well-being? Again, I think about the challenges that might still persist, right? On one hand, we've all adapted in one way, shape, or form, but we're nowhere near the end. So are you seeing challenges stay below the surface, right? Like maybe they pop up and come back, or are there things that are still persisting that you're trying to work on, or not? Do you feel like you're in a good holding place right now? Any ideas that come out of that?
Yes, I think we're in a temporary holding pattern. Some of the conversations we've had, we recognize just there's something missing with with the face-to-face. What I notice when I'm in the office, the spur of the moment conversation occurs that I know doesn't occur at home or when we are remote. Even though I've at occasion, a couple of times, I've just quickly did a video call with somebody as if I were to walk into their cubicle. I think working remotely, we tend to be much more scheduled. So I think we are missing some spontaneity, some impulsive conversations that occur that could occur when you're in the office that aren't occurring now. So I think it's a bit of a negative impact. One of the things that I would like to do going forward is we use chat. A few of us use chat quite a bit, and so that's good. But just that spur of the moment, click the video call and have a 5-minute conversation, 2-minute conversation, whatever, and just feel a lot more free of doing that as opposed to having to schedule the meeting to have the video conference.
Yeah.
And then you ask, how does this work going forward? I mean, one of the obvious things for us, especially as a startup company, we have been planning, well, when do we add space? When do we add space? I think that has completely changed because space is going to be added because we need the bricks and mortar to be able to function and do the job. But like if we are going to start adding more people in the office or marketing support or whatever it might be, the office may now become a hub where we come together and collaborate, but then we go off and work in our home environment if that's possible. And so the capital needs are going to be much less, I think.
Yeah, I appreciate the little bit of a segue there because I think that is the unique challenge that a lot of us are going to be faced with, and so that the next question that I kind of had that I wanted to ask you is and you just alluded to it a little bit, is how are the different roles in your organization impacted, right? So you already talked about that a little bit, like some of the people that have to work physically with the product or ship product, they have to be where the product is, right? So, but other roles, it's like there's a collaboration part and then there's a go get it done and execute part. And so how do you feel that's, talk a little bit more about that, because you're hinting, you're starting to talk about that, but digging a little deeper there, because I think there's a lot of people I feel that are probably thinking about or trying to solve that same problem.
Right, and it is about assessing the roles. Are the tools or the the components or the items here at the office that are necessary for the person to do their function, or can they easily be done anywhere? So we're finding that good collaboration, we still want to come together in the office. So that's irregardless of what function you have. But if it comes to, for example, customer service, or obviously sales are remote, but some of the maybe office support functions that aren't tied to product or tied to the building, we're looking at it and saying, well, we really don't need to bring the equipment here. We don't need to have the office furniture. We don't need to expand the space. So we're segregating basically, I'd say front office from back office, or front office from factory, and just saying, really, does the front office need to be here to function? Again, we have the space to come together in a large conference room to collaborate and work together when necessary, but that's most likely not 5 days a week.
Right. So you're starting to hint at the marriage of the function of collaboration and the ability to collaborate, because that's been one of our beliefs too, is that we're human beings, we're social by nature. I mean, that goes back to, gosh, and it's either Plato or Aristotle or something said people by nature are social animals, right? So we need the interaction, and that's where I think we work best. But yet at the same time, there's certain things that we all do where it's easier if we had focus time and are able to do it wherever we are, whether it's a coffee shop or our home or whatever. But okay, so that's the marriage of kind of the culture and people and collaboration. But then there's another challenge, and you talked about that, like having multiple monitors at home. But have you changed your thought relative to what you're just saying? Like the front office people, maybe they don't need to be in the office all the time. So have you changed, or was it already part of your philosophy to say those folks get laptops and that's just what we do versus desktops? Or those folks, we don't buy 2 monitors for the office just for the office. We buy 4 because we want 2 at home and 2 at the office. Or is that at home their responsibility? And one other seed is like, does it change the way you look at mobile devices, right? Because some people, if they're in the office all the time, they might not need to use their mobile device, and you might not do like a cell phone reimbursement or something like that. But if you intend people to be more remote, well, maybe you end up doing that, and then having different security policies. So I'm just curious, like there's then the technology piece to either enable or to reinforce your expectations and policy. Can you talk a little bit about that, how that's impacted your organization?
Yes. So in the beginning, as we were adding staff, we're up to 16 people currently. And when I started, I think I was number 6. So as we added, we had that question, should we go with desktops, save some money, especially with people that we expected to be less mobile. They sit at their desk, they answer the phone, everything is through the computer. And I'm not sure how we came to the decision, but we just decided, you know what, we're just going to go with laptops because we're a startup. There are a lot of things change. We don't know where we're going to be. We don't know what's going to happen. And we're just basically built everything on wheels. And that's why we stayed away from the desktop. And thankfully we did, because we needed that, right? So that's definitely something that's going forward I think we'll stick with unless we have a requirement for a desktop. Stuff back in the factory, that's actually some of it's desktop, some of it's laptop. When it comes to technology, we've questioned phones, and I think once we're all back together again, we realize we really don't need office phones. With voice over IP, that's just, it's a monthly charge that we really don't need because everybody has their phone forwarded to their cell phone anyway. Or we could also get it right through our computer as well. So we really don't need the phones, and that's on my list of things to get rid of.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the challenges that, you can take your laptop with you, but you can't take your handset with you. It doesn't work that way typically, unless there's some that would work that way, but most don't.
Right, and we have the option to do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is that what you ended up doing?
That's probably what I will end up doing when I get to that task. Just get rid of all the handsets and send them back. Because you can either have it through your phone. It's a much cheaper monthly charge than having the phone. And if I don't like talking to my computer on the phone, I can have the number forwarded to my cell phone. Because again, it's all voice over IP.
Yeah, and not that I'm. This isn't a shameless plug, but it's going to sound like one. But like the headset that I'm wearing, for example, I love it because it's Plantronics, by the way, but it actually physically connects to my laptop so that I'm able to talk to it via Bluetooth. So there's a base station, Bluetooth connects, and I'm able to then use it for Teams or on a Teams call. But if my cell phone rings, it also connects to my cell phone via Bluetooth, so I don't have to change my headset to be able to do exactly what you just said. Is like if I'm talking to my computer and then I want to change to my cell phone, I actually don't have to change my headset if I don't want to. I just think that's one of the cool developments of just some simple technology that can really do exactly what you just suggested in a lot less expensive way than a handset. So
yes.
Cool. Okay, good. So we alluded to this a little bit, and I guess I just want to open it up in case there's other items, which is, what are some of the adjustments, if any, are you considering for long-term structure investments? I mean, you mentioned office space, some of the technology of handsets. Anything else that's like, are you considering staff out of market, right? I mean, you talked about being able to come to the office to collaborate, so out of market still might be a challenge for that, but are you thinking, I don't know, anything, I just kind of open-ended question as far as like long-term changes of thought.
Long-term, it's actually changed. Probably one of the things that's changed most significantly that we didn't think was even possible was video conferencing for sales. We've trained clinicians on our product through video, and so that opens up the whole territory. When we're a startup and you have very few sales reps, you now can reach anybody in the United States if they're open and willing to that. And we have found a willingness on many clients and clinicians to be able to do that, because I think they're forced into it through other environments as well. And so that starts to think about traveling budget, location of our sales reps. Typically, you want them planted around the United States in certain territories. That's not necessarily needed now. The territory can grow much bigger. Definitely on the bricks and mortar investment, office furniture. it's a lot cheaper to set somebody up with technology at home than it is to just get the office furniture in place and so forth, and space requirements. So it's definitely impacting our thoughts going forward and how we expand and grow, that we will probably limit our capital investment and try to push as much outside as possible, provided we feel that we're really getting the work done. And I think we've proven to ourselves that we are getting the work done. You had asked kind of some of I didn't fully answer one of your previous questions, but there was a belief system, various belief systems that some believe, if you're not here at work getting the work done, you're working at a lower productivity when you're not here. I think we've proven to ourselves that the work is getting done, regardless if you're here or not. And so I think we've all become a little more comfortable with remote working. I, for one of them, I'm an advocate of, get in the office face to face, get the work done. And I've changed my views personally.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate that perspective, and that just your insight on that, because I do, on the sales front, as you mentioned, because I do agree that in general, the nature of sales processes is you meet face to face, and it didn't mean that we couldn't do video interaction in the past. It's just it wasn't as normalized, if that makes sense. It wasn't as maybe accepted or felt like it was appropriate as it is now. I still think, as you had alluded to earlier, when you're really going to dig in and collaborate, or there definitely warrants time where face-to-face is different, and it is a step better from a relationship building perspective. But in the end, I didn't think about that perspective, especially for an organization like yourselves, whose one of your significant cost structures is travel for sales, and you can minimize that, or you can optimize it, or only travel when you really need to. So
exactly.
Yeah, excellent point. The other thing that I'm curious about is, you talked about it's less investment to build a home office or to give people the technology to work at home than at the office. But one of the challenges that I know we struggle with, and I think other people are struggle with this as well, is that, okay, so let's say you have space for 10 people at the office, and you have 20 people that might at some point need to use that. It doesn't mean they do it all at the same time, right? So you're kind of creating like a hotel environment, for example. One of the challenges we've had with that philosophy or that theory is that I think when people do come to the office, they like to have their own space, right? They like to have, like, maybe I've got my my mug, or my a picture of my family or something like that. How I don't know. Have you thought through some of those things, of how you think that's going to impact you and your team, as far as having a dedicated space or more of a shared hotel kind of space for people when they come back to the office for collaboration?
Sure. And we've had a mixed model of both from day one, because we've used a lot of outside resources, consultants, or part-time help. If they weren't consultants, they were contracted for a certain part of what we were doing. And so we've always had either tables or a couple cubicles that are just dedicated to roaming. We call it roaming space,
Okay.
It's whoever shows up gets it kind of space. And then there's others that are here every day that have permanent space. So I think we would continue to leverage that model. And one of the things you kind of hit on is, if your space is undersized compared to all of your employees, how do you manage that? How do you bring everybody together? And so leaving open space is actually quite critical. So instead of filling it up with a bunch of cubicles that aren't always filled, I'm advocating that we leave that open space so that when we come together, we can have a meeting room that's large enough to hold us all, but then we all go away and work. And there's probably space set up for half the company at a given time.
Yeah.
And we could talk about, rotating schedules and so forth, especially like if we're going to use part of the facility for meetings or collaboration or whatever it might be. But definitely that flexibility and being able to maybe get by with less space and office furniture and infrastructure to just to help us, especially as a startup company. The last thing we really want to sink our money into is space. We'd rather sink it into growing the market and so forth.
Yeah, R&D development. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think this is one of the challenges that I've seen a lot of, and probably a lot of you have seen a lot of articles out there where there are people that are advocating, we're never going to use office space again. Everyone's working from home, and a lot of these big companies are saying everyone can work remotely through the end of 2021. I think that I mean, there's some people that might like that, but I think more of what I think the evolution, and it depends on the business, but I think the evolution is going to be more along the lines of what you're talking about, Jerry, which is more of a hybrid mode, right?
Yeah,
There's going to be,
so.
it's identifying and recognizing. I think this is also something that managers and leaders are going to have to recognize too, again, depending on the role, is that there's certain work that we all do that it's better to be in person to collaborate. And then there's certain work that we do that you can be more productive when you're alone and when you're away. And it's being able to recognize that and optimize the space for to enable the work, the most productive work based on what you're doing. So it's not going to, I don't think it's going to be an all or none. Because I think, again, we all, at least personally as a human being, I like interacting with other human beings, and video is good, but it doesn't cut it.
And all of us have, we've had a survey internally about when do we want to come back to work and that type of thing, and do we need to come back to work? And we all agree there needs to be some face-to-face. There has to be some face-to-face, or there's just the natural drifting of the relationship. It's not maybe as deep or as committed, or it just changes. It changes it, and not necessarily for the good. And so we do need that some face-to-face time. Not necessarily 5 days a week, but we definitely going to zero hasn't been good for us either.
All right, so I have two quick follow-up questions. I know we're running slightly over time, but again, I feel like there's been some good. I didn't want to leave the conversation yet. So one, you just mentioned that you did a survey. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what was it? Why did you do it? What were you trying to accomplish with that? Because I hadn't heard that before.
Right, and we did a forms survey using the Teams product or the Office product. And it was just to get everybody's candid feedback on, are they comfortable coming back to work? What if anything has to change to be able for them to come back to work? And just some preferences around different options of what was being proposed. And of course, we're a small company, but we got the survey, we looked at the results, and I think the takeaway was really we have the ability, the flexibility to leave it up to each individual, really, especially the managers. Just look, if you're comfortable working from home and it's not impacting the business, we're okay with that. If you're comfortable working in the office, we're at a point now where we're comfortable with that, provided we follow our social distancing rules and mask wearing and so forth, and washing, hygiene, and so forth. So we just use that as a tool to give everybody a voice.
That's awesome. Great idea. I love that you, just realized that was something you were trying to accomplish as a business and use the tool to survey, which, by the way, is not necessarily, I didn't plan this, but because you referenced a Microsoft 365 tool of Forms, that was going to be my last question, or last line of questions, which is, looking at that suite. That's one of the things that this series has been, we've focused a lot on, because there's a lot of communication and collaboration capabilities that are built into these tools. And so working remote, a lot of people have been using those tools more, and they found different ways to use those tools. So I guess, can you tell, how has your team leveraged those? Is there anything in particular that you found really beneficial, or maybe that was a surprise? And then also, if you can weave in, if it makes sense, like, what are some of did you have challenges with driving adoption, or did you have, those kind of things? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So we started out with the very basics, and I utilized MyTech quite a bit to help get it all set up. But we established the certain teams, and I had a couple of go-to people that I worked with that helped use the tools and promoted the tools and started converting our meetings to a Teams meeting. And so the adoption really has gone fairly well. I think some wanted to stick with the way we've always been doing it, the conference call and so forth. But eventually, as everybody around you starts calling Teams meetings and expect you to get on, click on video instead of call into the, through the landline or through the conference bridge, that started driving adoption. And then also, using the capabilities like meeting minutes, action items, planner is a big one. And then agenda for meetings, instead of emailing them out, I said, well, here's the link in Teams, go ahead and look at it in Teams. And then, since then, I just say, you want to see the agenda? Look at it on Teams, and open up the meeting and notice on Teams, and look at the meeting agenda. It's posted there. So really driving people, if they want the information, that's where they go and see it. And utilizing SharePoint, which has been a little more difficult for us for storage retention, because we've got a server. We're used to remote using VPN for that. We also have Dropbox that's still hanging out there. Mm-hmm. So some things are just hard to get away from. But that's also served us well in some cases. So it's just keep using the tool, driving people to see the information at the tool, and getting people comfortable with the tool. But we really haven't had like any war stories about resistant adoption of it.
That's good. Well, and I love that. I think that's one of the consistent messages we've heard, and I appreciate you validating and reinforcing that, is that build the use of the tool into your daily or weekly operations, right? Like if there's meeting minutes or an agenda, put it in a place where they have to go use the tool to get it, right? Yeah. And you'll start reinforcing that. So that's a great example of just kind of doing that. So, all right, final question before we open it up to general Q&A and kind of wrap up here, is any tips that you might have, and when I consider tips, I always think of it in a couple different, one of two ways. One, either something you would recommend that someone do that you wish you would have done, or something that you would recommend someone don't do that you did, and in retrospect you wouldn't do again. Anything that comes to mind when I ask that question for the audience and folks listening?
Yes, and it's something I tried to do, and that's become knowledgeable of how to set up teams. Because I was told, you don't want to get too far and try to unwind it. It's difficult to undo what you've done. Mm-hmm. And then also one thing that we did do is we locked down permissions. And so if people wanted to change or add to their teams or create a new team or whatever it might be, we had to have a discussion. I guess one thing that maybe I wish I could have done and I would like to do, and I advise people, really spend the time to seek out best practices and learn from that, and really design your how you're going to roll this out up front, and how you're going to structure the teams and the authorities and so forth, permissions, and then you'll probably make a few less mistakes going into it, because no doubt we made mistakes, and there's some things I wish, maybe just minor things that I wish I hadn't done. I still don't have some of the things figured out, so it'd be nice to have full-time IT support here, but we don't. So I guess the one thing you don't want to do is be hesitant and not use it. Dig in, dive in, use it, learn, move forward.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate that. And by the way, I appreciate that. For those listening, that was not a planted question for that answer, because that's one of the things that I feel is what we're trying to accomplish as MyTech, and part of our video series that we've been doing is we're trying to enable folks like Jerry and folks listening, because to help think through a little bit of a plan so that you're intentional about as you're going down it. But I also agree with you, Jerry, the last comment that you made, which is, but don't be afraid to dig in, right? Because the reality is this stuff is going to change, because Microsoft is changing it literally on a daily and weekly basis. So whatever you're doing today, there's going to be something new in the future that you're going to maybe want to change what you do anyway, even if it was the right thing to do or the best thing to do at that time. So I agree, like if you can be intentional about trying to have some foresight in what you're doing, but also don't be afraid to just dig in and start trying it out, because you'll learn and you'll adapt. So, and we're willing to help, right? That's one of the, we're passionate about that. This is one of the things that we found has been really beneficial, not only for our organization, but for a lot of our clients. And we want to help people take advantage, because a lot of these tools, guess what? You're already paying for them anyway. So let's might as well take advantage of them and start using them to your advantage. So, all right. Well, thank you, Jerry, for the final thoughts there. So I'd like to take it back quickly to the slides, as I believe Stephanie's probably already navigating that back to you with some recommended next steps. One of the things I always like to talk about when we have a session like this is, look, our goal is for you to think about what are the challenges, what are the problems you're trying to solve. I really encourage that. That's a question that several coaches and mentors of mine have always asked me. what's the problem you're trying to solve, because the more clear you can be about the problem, the easier the answer is going to come, or you're going to be more clear about this is the path for you. So I'm hoping that there's a couple things that might have been nuggets you can take away from today. Whatever those are, please write them down now. I encourage you, digitally or on physical paper, write them down now, because really try and figure out, take some baby steps in the next 24 to 48 hours, whether that's scheduling time to deal with it, or maybe trying something out that you heard today, because that's really in the end what we're trying to help is think through some things that can help you improve the way you're operating. So Stephanie's probably also posting right now. We put together, as I mentioned earlier, a remote work self-assessment. We put that out online. That'll give you some ideas and thoughts and suggestions. And just really the idea is there's no right or wrong there. We just tried to give you some things to think about that might help you navigate some of the things that Jerry talked about today, as not only in the here and now and leveraging some of that short-term memory, but even some of the longer-term stuff that we talked about as far as investing in laptops versus desktops, maybe not investing as much office space, et cetera, right? Those kind of things. And also join us for future virtual training events and power user sessions. We've got training events built out through the end of the year. If you go to mytech.com/events, that'll come out in the follow-up email as well, which is how you found this event most likely. And we also have monthly power user sessions. Our October session is yet to be scheduled, but we schedule those once a month. And really the goal is, going back to one of the comments Jerry made, is our goal with those power user sessions is to really help enable the folks inside the organization that are going to be responsible for driving adoption and helping how the organization leverages these tools, is to help walk side by side with you and help you understand how this stuff works, so that you can do a better job of helping drive adoption. And again, we're here to help all along the way. So with that said, I want to say thank you very much, Jerry, for sharing your experience and just being open and vulnerable to sharing the things that you felt went well and things that didn't go so well and things you do differently. And I'd like to open it up for questions from the audience, if there is any.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions right now, Nate.
All right. No worries. So I'll plant a seed here, Jerry. So relative to when I talk about, I want to hit on the power user question. Would you consider, like, we look at the power user as the person in the organization that really should be that person that is that discussion point. Like you said, we restricted permissions so that if we're going to create a team, we need to have a conversation about it. Are you the person that kind of is the facilitator or the leader of those conversations?
Yes, by default. It's kind of a standing joke here that, I'm your first IT resource that you go and see. I've got an engineering background, so I know some things, but I wouldn't say I'm IT, and I shouldn't be IT. So because we are a small company and startup, I do become that power user. And so what I've done is I've taken advantage of the MyTech training. I've also, there's lots of training out on YouTube as well. And then we also have another training service through our HR handling payroll system, whatever it's called, Insperity. And so there's a ton of training. So when I specifically want to know something, you can go out and find it. So I am the power user. It comes to me, I guess. But then getting more people kind of excited and helping is really what I've been trying to do. And there's a couple in the company that dig into capability and I think have surpassed me in some areas.
Yeah, I appreciate what you just said, and I think for those of you who haven't heard, I've said this many times before, but one of the things you just said just made me want to reiterate it, Jerry, is that what we've found in engaging lots of different folks over the last couple of years through this kind of training and awareness is that there are people in your organization that will see and understand the business problem, and then when they're presented with technology options that could solve it, they inherently and intuitively connect those dots. And they're like, oh, I see how this tool can help us solve or be better at solving this problem. And then there are people in the organization, again, I'm making a little bit of a black and white or like a binary statement here, is that there are people in the organization that are just like, just tell me how you want me to use the tool. Like, I don't want to figure it out, just tell me how to use it. So that's one of the things that we've learned that relative to the discussion we were just having is trying to identify those folks in the organization that enjoy the challenge of connecting those dots, right? And I think one of the reasons why, and just to put it in context, Jerry, and I know you know this, but that we want to work side by side with someone like yourself or others on your team is because you who live and work inside the organization 40 plus hours a week understand the business problems and the operational challenges way better than we do. And so our goal is to try and enable you to help connect those dots because you understand the operational challenges and the way, and hopefully if we can help you understand the capabilities on the technical side, and again, I don't mean too technical, I mean just even some of the solutions that are out there, hopefully it'll help you connect those dots better. We don't want to leave you alone and hanging, but we do want to help you, because again, try and tap into that operational knowledge that you have of the organization that's going to be better than any third party like ourselves.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it would be fair for me to say that I've reached out to MyTech. This isn't a planned plug for you guys or anything, but I've reached out to the person that we deal with normally and say, hey, we're having this struggle, or I don't know how to do this. Do you have somebody there that'll help, that can help? And we've had meetings that have talked through, such example, live events. We created a special session to teach us how to do that because back to what I was saying, we needed to show professional live events to clinicians, and we had never done it. So we quickly reached out to you and said, how do we do this? And what office products do we need to do it, and so forth. And so leveraging knowledgeable resources such as MyTech has really helped us, especially as a small company, to figure out how to do some of the things. Like you said, we identified the business need, we didn't know how to solve it, and that's why we worked with you to come up with a solution.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, I do appreciate the plug, but I know that this wasn't planned. This was just a dialogue to share experience. So I do appreciate you saying that. I'm glad that we were able to find that, and I welcome any other opportunities like that in the future if you're trying to solve a problem that you're faced with. So all right, well, I don't see any more questions. So I'll want to give everyone some time back in their day. So thank you so much for joining us, Jerry. Thank you for being so willing to share your experience and just your insight. I know I learned several things from our conversation today that I didn't know that are going to help us do better. And I hope that all of you listening and watching in the future were able to take some nuggets away as well. So any final comments before we sign off, Jerry?
No, I just appreciated talking about our experience, and hopefully it was of benefit to somebody.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Make it a great day and take care of each other, okay? Have a good one.
Right. Bye.
Bye.